We're coming very quickly up on a new semester, the start of a new season, and there are a lot of things that we can do to get ready for this and to prepare our bodies for a significantly more intensive couple weeks into a season. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So why does preseason nutrition matter? So first of all, it's a significantly higher training load than maybe you've been doing over the summer. It could be probably a greater risk of underfueling, whether that could be very unintentional, but when your exercise goes up or your training goes up, your energy needs will also skyrocket. But given the um, exercise load and maybe the humidity or the heat, your appetite might not skyrocket alongside your needs. So you have that risk of underfueling. It sets the foundation for your season. So for your performance, your ability to recover, body composition, and preventing those injuries that are at higher risk at the start of the season. And you want to just, of course, start your season off on a good note. And prehab is better than rehab. So what I mean by that is like being proactive, setting your body up for its peak optimal strength. And instead of running the risk of having those injuries and then having to rehab along with, healing and training. And nutrition is a huge part of this. So the main preseason goals include optimizing your energy availability, so how much energy you have kind of ready when you're training, to support muscle repair and recovery, because that training load has gone up and is probably greater than what you've been doing over the summer or prior to preseason. Building or maintaining lean body mass, hydrating to prevent performance drops, and preventing low energy availability and red S. We'll talk about those further. So, what is energy availability? It refers to the amount of energy available for bodily physiological and homeostatic processes to function properly. And that's after accounting for the energy expended through exercise. So it's really just kind of the calories left over for your body's functions after you exercise. So making sure you have enough energy for your heart pumping, your lungs, your GI system, your brain power, etc. Um, when we have low energy availability, it can lead to things like hormone disruption, fatigue, poor recovery, injury risk. And it's really because our body doesn't have a sufficient energy available to carry out these functions. So these are our life-sustaining functions that we need on a daily basis. But when we increase our exercise and our training, a lot of that calories that we intake are going to be put towards that, and the other functions are going to be left out a little bit. So low energy availability also, it can occur with or without eating disorders or disordered eating. So it can be very unintentional, especially because it's a drastic shift in what your body's doing and what it needs to take in. And I share because the risk is higher during preseason due to that increased volume. You may have double sessions on that you may not have during the season, or you're just coming off of those off-season habits. So less training, less energy taken in, etc. So, I mean, depending on how you prepared yourself off season, this also too will affect how much you're at of low energy availability. So if you know that you were pretty active before preseason and you had a pretty good nutrition intake, then you may be at lower risk of that low energy availability, but it's a good time to take a set of time to kind of reflect on what your summer or your preseason has looked like and kind of be able to start from here. So I want to talk about something called Red S. So Red S is relative energy deficiency in sport. It's basically an outcome if an athlete's body is consistently not getting enough energy left after exercise to support those physiological functions, ultimately leading to that low energy availability. And again, then it comes out with these impacts that are shown in these little pie charts here. So there's two different like conceptual models that I think are really helpful to kind of recognize. And one, the first being like the health conceptual model. So how does red S or low energy availability affect your health outcomes? So that could be things like, that hormone function, your loss of period if you're a female, um, general cognitive dysfunction, brain fog, affecting of hormones and blood glucose levels, your immune system being impaired. So all of those things that we kind of consider our health factors being affected. And then we look at kind of that like Redis conceptual performance model. So, how is your performance as an athlete going to be affected? So, you may have a lower training response. Your recovery may be significantly slowed down. You may not have as quick of a reaction time on the field or the sport on the court or et cetera. You may notice that your endurance is lower or you fatigue sooner into practice than you have before. So, um, the this origin of these outcomes are all kind of the same in the sense of like low energy availability, but the outcomes being expressed in different ways, both how your health is affected and your performance is affected. Any questions on that? All right, so now that we're heading into preseason for the most part, the primary macronutrient that we're going to want to focus on is carbohydrates. And we need these for high intensity, skill based practices, along with the trainings of long durations or multiple sessions a day. So, giving your body a consistent and adequate amount of carbohydrates alongside that training will really energize you through those long double sessions, lifts, runs, or even just the educational sessions you might have with your team or your coach. So if you were to be kind of in a position of low carbohydrates where we weren't getting enough of this macronutrient, again, going to be at increased risk of injury or slower reaction time or quick fatigue, etc. So the target amount, and this is kind of going to be dependent on your sport and your training, but generally 5 to 10 grams per kilogram a day. So what does that mean? So our body weight converted from pounds into kilograms, and then about 5 to 10 times that a day. And we want to space that out kind of throughout the day. So giving us a consistent amount so we have kind of a stable level of blood sugar and energy to last us all day. And now, of course, we must get enough protein also to support an active recovery and muscle repair. Preseason can often put our body into like turbo mode, especially after a long summer break. So, getting enough protein through both meals and snacks at a consistent basis is essential to get through the day and to be focused on. So, like I said, spreading that protein out throughout the day and not consuming it all at once. So that could look like having protein with a meal or a snack every 3 to 4 hours, really prioritizing having a solid 20 to 40 grams after your workout. And this will really support your lean mass, your lean muscle gains, the time in which it takes you to recover from training, maintaining that immunity, especially going back to school where there's a lot of people around, you're around a lot of people, and germs spread like wildfire. So if you have enough of this macronutrient, or making sure that you're fueling properly, that will boost your immune system to hopefully fight off those illnesses. So these are a couple of examples of foods that are roughly 20 to 40 grams. Again, this is going to kind of shift, but I like the visual piece to it because it makes it easier to kind of understand. So on the top left is some grilled chicken. So around 4 ounces of grilled chicken is about 30 grams of protein. 6 ounces of steak is roughly 42 grams. Just a general hamburger patty is going to be roughly 28 grams, and then so on. So you can see that there, the top is like mostly of those animal-based foods, and then the bottom is primarily the plant-based foods. So eggs, you may need a little bit more, like 5. The cup of cottage cheese is going to be about 25 to 30 grams as well, and so on. So again, a lot of ways to keep the protein you take in throughout the day varied, and doesn't have to be all at once. You don't have to have these all together, but you can have them kind of spaced throughout the day and do a mix between animal and plant-based proteins if you choose to have animal proteins or don't have any sort of dietary restrictions. Oops. So another piece to the preseason focus is something that I've kind of talked about this summer, but I will reiterate because, again, it's a super important concept that we need to remember throughout the season, not just during preseason. And that's your pre and post workout goals. So what you do before your training and what you do after your training to be able to just get through the day for a double session, long training, etc., and to be able to be re-energized for that following day or next couple of days. So your pre-workout goals are going to be to provide readily available fuel, mostly carbohydrates that I talked about, to prevent fatigue and maintain your focus during your sessions, and of course to support hydration to get you through those trainings. So roughly 2 to 3 hours before, you're going to want to have a full meal. So that balanced performance plate of carbs, protein, fat, and color. So an example may be like a chicken burrito bowl or a turkey sandwich, or if you're more plant-based, it could be a bagel breakfast egg sandwich, etc. And so those will keep you a little bit more sustained and energized for a long time. If it's closer to your time of training or practice, roughly 30 to 60 minutes, that's where we're going to want to focus on those easier to digest carbohydrates. So some kind of fruit like a banana, granola bar, pretzels, fruit gummies, could be dried fruit, it could be crackers, it could be a Rice Krispie treat. Not necessarily having to be anything too complex, and something to give you enough energy to just top off those stores that you already have. And then after your workout, we think about those 3 R's that I mentioned in a previous session this summer. And that is to replenish your glycogen. So getting carbohydrates to be able to refill the muscle stores of glycogen. Repair the muscles, because during a training or a practice or a lift, you've created a lot of micro muscle tears in your muscles, and protein is going to be that macronutrient to support that repair process. And then to rehydrate, of course. So that whether that's with water or electrolytes or a combination of those two that we're going to want to especially focus on if you are one who is practicing outdoors or are have like a high sweat rate on average. So within 30 to 60 minutes of your training, there's the most important thing is to get a roughly 3-to-1 ratio of carbohydrates and protein. So that could be, like 30 grams of protein or 15 grams of protein to 45 grams of carbohydrates. Sorry, my mental math was not there today. So that could look something like a chocolate milk, which has, a good balance of both. Recovery shake, a smoothie with fruit and Greek yogurt, or even a peanut butter jelly and a protein shake. So something that's easy, something that if you're not able to get to a meal within an hour, something you can have packed in the bag or that's easily accessible right when you get home before you do things. So. And then we want to make sure again, then within 1 to 2 hours, we are having a full performance plate. So carbohydrates, protein, color, hydration, and healthy fats. So whether it's practice, training, a game, lift, we must stay hydrated, especially because the beginning of preseason, it's still summer, and that can be especially dehydrating. So when we're dehydrated, our performance can be significantly impaired. Our focus can be not there. Our coordination could be lacking, and our injury risk can be significantly increased. I like to share that even a 2% loss in body weight from sweat can impact your endurance and power output. So that's pretty significant. It's a very low percentage of dehydration can cause a pretty significant impact. So how we want to prepare is to kind of think about how are we going to hydrate before, during, and after practice or training or a game, etc. So before, we want to aim for roughly 16 to 20 ounces of water 2 to 3 hours before. So we've all done that where we hydrate right before training or exercise and we get those cramps. So we want to give our body enough time to really process that water and to absorb it, and then get roughly 15 to 30 minutes before a little bit of that, again, top off hydration of 8 to 10 ounces. During practice, again, to prevent some cramping, is to take sips of like 5 to 10 ounces every 15, 20 minutes, and add in those electrolytes during hot or humid conditions. Or if you just have a long session and you want to add some electrolytes and or carbohydrates into that mix with like a sports drink or something like that. And then after practice, replenishing the water you've lost, especially through sweat, um, is really important. So one way you can do that is to actually um, just to get kind of an idea of what you may be losing on average during a practice is you can actually weigh yourself before and after practice. And for every pound lost, you can replace it with 16 to 24 ounces of water. So say you lost a pound and a half, you didn't actually lose a pound and a half of muscle or fat. It's the water because you were sweating, and that's just a normal process of training. So you can kind of calculate it that way to be able to rehydrate in an adequate amount. And then if you want to, again, include electrolytes, sodium is going to be the biggest one that we lose through sweat alongside other electrolytes like potassium, calcium, magnesium, etc. And you can do this with a sports drink or some sort of salty snack alongside your water. So, and then remembering another way to check for your hydration status, just in general, is to check your urine. So, your urine color should ideally be like a light lemonade color, if you can kind of visualize it that way. Doesn't have to be fully clear, but something on that lighter end to kind of know that you're at a good stage. If it's orange or dark or really, really yellow, that's kind of can be a sign that you're underhydrated and can kind of be that reminder to hydrate extra. Um, Another like a way that we can kind of even prevent that is to set reminders in our phone. So just to practice that consistent hydrating. So setting a reminder or one of those pop-up things like take 3 sips of water every et cetera, like X amount of, every half hour. And that'll eventually throughout the day, you'll realize that you did get a pretty significant amount in. And it's so then you don't also too have to chug all of the water at once if you forget. So another topic that is important when we talk about preseason is your micronutrients focused. So these are going to be both the vitamins and minerals that we get from food that assist in that energy and recovery process. So, like I said, increased training leads to increased needs. And these micronutrients can be a really strong foundation for your bone health, your recovery, and your immune function. So, I thought I would highlight just a few that are specifically very important for athletes to get enough of. But overall, the main goal is that we get a variety of fruits and vegetables and foods in our diet so that we can get a full spectrum of both vitamins and minerals. So the first one I want to recognize is iron, and this is especially important for females and endurance athletes. Iron carries oxygen to muscles, and when we have low iron, we have very low energy and an early fatigue. So the sources of this, if you are not a vegetarian, is red meat and chicken. But if you need more plant-based sources, there are spinach, lentils, and fortified cereals and grain products. A tip with this is to pair it with a vitamin C food to boost its absorption. They kind of work hand in hand when eaten together to be able to absorb in an optimal way. Second one that is quite important for athletes specifically is vitamin D. The vitamin D supports both your bone and immune health as well. So again, that trend of low levels of vitamin D leading to a higher injury and illness risk. So your best source is going to be the sunlight, the sunshine, and um, just making sure you have adequate amount outdoors so that you can absorb that vitamin D through your skin. But you can also get it through fortified milk, fatty fishes, some mushrooms, and supplements if needed. Next one I want to talk about is calcium, another mineral and electrolyte. So we need about 1,000 to 1,300 milligrams a day, and that's needed for our bone density and that muscle contraction. So the basically all of the moves you're going to be doing in your training are supported by your the mineral calcium. So we get that from milk, yogurt, fortified, plant milks, cheeses, leafy greens, and more. So again, going to be important for that recovery piece and preventing injury. Ones that I grouped together because they kind of do similar things is magnesium, zinc, and just general antioxidants that come from a spectrum of fruits and vegetables. These all support your muscle recovery and reduce that inflammation. So inflammation is inevitable, especially when we are increasing our training by a significant amount. And we want to, again, to prevent that injury or speed up that recovery risk, reduce that inflammation the best that we can and as effectively as we can. And so this can come from these specific micronutrients. You can get these through nuts and seeds and whole grains, berries, avocado, sweet potato, um, pretty much anything with a solid, strong color to them as a fruit and vegetable are going to give you those antioxidants. Um, so in general, rather than just like focusing on the specifics, is really focusing on just having a colorful, whole food based meals to meet your needs naturally. We don't always need to supplement with specific vitamins and minerals unless medically prescribed or confirmed deficient. But by getting a full range of foods, whether it's fruits and vegetables, animal foods, plant foods, etc., um, we can usually get a pretty sufficient amount through food alone. Okay, so what could goals be by sport and position? This slide looks a little wordy, but if you have a good idea of what like maybe one or two categories of sport you fall under as an athlete, it's kind of a little bit more manageable. So endurance-based sports like soccer, lacrosse, cross country, swimming. You want to focus on how high of a carbohydrate need you have to support that volume and glycogen demands. Goals wanting to like prevent that early season fatigue, strengthen that recovery. And so ways to do this is to include frequent snacks, prioritizing recovery meals and not skipping them, and typically adding electrolytes. If you are a power or strength athlete, something like football, track, sprinters or wrestling, your focus may be more on like that muscle building and recovering with the high protein needs. Um, you want to probably optimize that lean muscle mass without sacrificing the energy you have available to do your sport. So this is going to look like focusing on high protein snacks, keeping regular and consistent meals, and strategic carbohydrate timing. So really focusing on that 2 to 3 hours and 30 to 60-minute carbohydrate intake so that you have the adequate amount of energy right at the start of your training. Weight class sports, whether that's wrestling, rowing, gymnastics, etc. Focus is sometimes on, weight maintenance or weight gain or body composition and not rapid weight loss. So here's something that we would really want to work to avoid that red S syndrome, maintaining our strength and our energy availability. So maybe you need a dietitian support or just focusing on gradual training and having structured fueling and snacks readily available at all times for when you need that recovery fuel. And then there's something like field or court sports, whether that's basketball, volleyball, hockey, and again, all these sports could probably be intermixed within a couple of these categories, but just to kind of divide it out in general is, these sports may be focusing on a mix of fuel needs. So sometimes you have a high burst of energy where you need to perform actions in a quick and powerful manner. And then there are times again too when you're going to need that to maintain that endurance. So, we're going to need to kind of balance both protein and carbohydrates, maintaining regular meals and kind of maintaining those long-term performance needs because they're ones that you're kind of keep going and going. So you need to maintain that energy availability. So, athlete Q&A. So these are just some things that I commonly hear and I can kind of just again like they may be a question that you have or um yeah, just things that I've heard in the past that are common for athletes. So, big one being like I'm not hungry in the morning or I don't have an appetite, should I still eat or should I train fasted? The answer is yes. You should still eat, but there are some things that we can do to train your gut and train your appetite. So by starting small, which something even like a banana or even half a banana with or something bland like toast, or maybe liquid energy like a smoothie or juices. And starting there and not overdoing your system so that you feel run down, but fueling yourself so that your appetite can adjust over time. Because when you do that and you are consistent with it, even if it's a bite one day and two bites the next day, etc., we are able to train our gut to have those hunger cues in the morning before a training. Another one I hear is like, how do I feel for 2-a-days? Um, Biggest would be using portable snacks, keeping things in your bags that are shelf stable or lasting throughout the day. So whether it's making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or having a bag of trail mix or fruit and protein bars, having those in between sessions to prioritize that recovery. Because when you're fueling in between a session, it's kind of like your recovery meal, but it's also kind of like your pre-workout meal, right? So kind of need to consider that as you're recovering from your first, but you still need to repair for and prepare for the next training that you have. So that's when it's going to be really important to, not only fuel adequately with the meal early in the day and in the evening, but like after and before those two sessions, but to have adequate snacks and fuel in between as well. Another one is recovery powder, so like protein powder, better or more effective than food. And answer is, not necessarily. Think shakes and protein drinks are very convenient and are definitely a better option than having nothing. But, real food like milk, peanut butter, um, meats, fish, fruits, eggs, etc., are going to be just as effective and honestly more of a complete food or meal that include probably a greater spectrum of, those micronutrients, fiber, um, fats, etc. And then just overall, how much should I eat? And that's a tricky one because it is going to be dependent on you and your goals and your sport, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really going to depend on that training load. So are you someone that's having double sessions? Are you outdoors? Are you lifting? Are you doing, sprints, et cetera? It's really going to kind of come down to a trial and error and really focusing on using your hunger and fullness cues. Um, to know when and when not to eat, and then recognizing how your performance is evolving. So your body is going to tell you how it's doing and if it has adequate fuel or not. If you're feeling slow the next day, that's a kind of a sign that maybe the day before was a day where the fuel was not sufficient enough. So it's again like kind of that trial and reflection piece where you may need to make tweaks and changes throughout the preseason. Bonus tips, keep snacks in your locker or your backpack. Like I said, just more is better. You'd rather have more things than you think you'll need. Even if you have leftovers that you packed, then that's just what you have to bring tomorrow. Or if you choose and it may save the energy of a teammate if you have extra, you think about that, that you're all again a team, that you should be, helping out one another. So if you have extra, that may be just kind of the saving grace for a teammate too. And then I think we think about tracking like weight or body composition or those types of results, but I think tracking your performance and how you're feeling and how your body is like how much time it's taking to recover, or did you have a good appetite in the morning one day or not the another? So tracking those trends rather than just your weight or body composition, etc. Can be really helpful, especially when we're, navigating how much we should eat or when we should eat, etc. So key takeaways that I want you all to take from today is that High training loads, so the beginning of preseason, leads a greater risk of underfueling due to those skyrocketed energy needs. And we need to be very conscious and aware of this because our appetite may not shift upwards alongside it. We want to set the foundation for a good season to prevent injury and early fatigue. We want to optimize our energy availability by meeting our body's functional needs in addition to our energy needed to perform our exercise demands. Preventing low energy availability and red S is crucial to having a successful season. Adequate carbohydrates are needed for high intensity and skill based practices. Focus on spreading your protein out throughout the day with meals and snacks. Pre and post workout fueling is essential to sustaining a demanding season. We can add electrolytes to our hydration plan if we're practicing in hot and humid conditions, or you're noticing that your hydration is not improving with water alone. We want to eat the rainbow to cover micronutrient needs, and we need to identify our nutrition needs based on yourself and your sport specifically. All right, thank you. Any questions from that? Stop the recording.
Thanks, Olivia.